Hello, and welcome to our presentation, Bridging the Gap Between Government and the Community with the Milwaukee County Issue Reporter. Thank you for tuning in today. My name is Soraya Wallace, and I am the CityWorks Application Analyst here at Milwaukee County, and I'm joined today with Tim Schomburg, the CityWorks Application Architect, to bring you a very exciting topic for us. So as it stands, Milwaukee County is currently comprised of a population of about 948,000 citizens. Internally, we have over 4,000 employees within various departments. Of those employees, we're logging about 100 daily CityWorks users that are completing work, creating work, and so forth. Of those 100 daily CityWorks users and more, we have about 500 service request users who are submitting work at any time to the various departments. Our CityWorks is currently configured with customizations for ease of work for over 10 different departments, including zoo, parks, and even architecture and engineering. Why? So Milwaukee County Parks had a big push for this application, specifically because it was driven by a few different factors that they needed. So these factors included COVID-19, being that the parks needed less interaction with people since their offices were closed for a good chunk of the year. They still needed a way for the citizens to communicate with the parks department because they still had concerns. With that said, their response times, they had noticed that there was a kind of almost like a hindrance in the amount of time that they were able to get to work as it was submitted, because it wasn't directly coming from the public. Being that they needed an application that would give them a way to turn around these times faster, because they would be coming directly from the public and kind of happening in real time. With that said, they also needed a way to kind of have a transparent vision for, the work that they have, being that they are currently understaffed and underfunded, which is very common for parks. But they needed a way to show why. So they had so much work, so many different concerns and issues that they had. And so they needed a way to say, this is the stuff we have. This is where we're struggling, and be able to find zones that can, use additional funding and or additional staffing. With that said, our highway department had a little bit different needs. The highway department currently had all their requests in a binder. And so everything that they had was essentially in paper form. It was because citizens would call in and they would write it down in the binder with the request, and then they would file it in the binder, and then nothing would ever come of it. It would never be logged into anything or tracked in any way. So we found that they needed a way to kind of get those requests in an application that they could digitize them and get them done in a more timely fashion. With that said, that also goes hand in hand with their reporting, because their reporting has there could be open records requests, and some open records requests, such as like pothole requests, would have to go back and revert to that binder. And in doing that, it's not the most effective way, and isn't the most, compiled in a way that would be best for those type of requests. Of course, Milwaukee has a lot of potholes, as you could assume, as any major city would. So it is important that we have it in a way that's easy for them to get access to and give access to whoever needs it. So our CityWorks issue report, or our Milwaukee County issue reporter, sorry about that, had a few different requirements that it needed. So for this, it had to be mobile friendly. So it had to be an application that people could access anywhere, anytime. Being that most of the requests were going to be coming from our people that are on our highways and or on our or in our parks. So we needed something that worked both on either a laptop or a iPhone, multiple devices, it doesn't matter. And luckily, Esri's framework gave us the access of that, and made it kind of responsive and reactive on multiple devices and computers. We built this in ArcGIS Online, because Milwaukee County does not have Portal, but it may be something that we may be having in the future. We needed something that had CityWorks integration, so we wanted something that was GIS-centric. So we wanted something that had the exact locations of all the issues that we have. We wanted to be able to know where everything is, because it's a lot easier to go back and fix something if you know where it is. We needed something that was able to be publicly available, so we wanted it to have citizen-facing And so that was a major, major push just because, some applications don't have access for that. But for this to work, we needed it to be available to have our citizens submit the issues that they have. And then we also needed two-way communication. So we needed a way that data could be sent from CityWorks and then also update the things that were updated in CityWorks sent back to the issue reporter. So that communication needed to be open and in a streamlined way so that it wasn't a hindrance or a delay to the service requests that are coming either from the issue reporter or any information that's coming back from CityWorks to the issue reporter. Additionally, because this was created in the middle of COVID, we needed something that was created with existing licensing. So we didn't have necessarily extra funding for this application. So we needed something essentially to be as affordable as possible. So this option was a kind of a no cost to Milwaukee County option. And that was why it was the big push to go with the Esri based application. So here's a quick walkthrough of the application that we have, and I will go through that for you. So this is the landing screen for our application. You see there's multiple ways that you can sign in. And so those include ArcGIS Online. We also have a Twitter login, and then we have a guest login. So once you come into our application interface, you'll notice that there's a big map in the middle with different types of issues on them. And so you can see all the data that you may need from the screen. So if you click any of these, they will bring up the information that is from the various departments. The two departments that we have in it currently are Parks and Highway. You'll notice our Parks map looks a little bit different, but it is the same interface. On the right side here, you'll see all of the options. Additionally, you'll also see if you click into them, here's that additional data that you have. So you'll be able to click each one and see that there's a status, details, any photos that are attached, comments, or so forth. Additionally, again, it changes for each one, so you'll be able to see all the different types that there are, and all the data that it collects. Some of this data is hidden to the public before it gets pushed back out to them so that they can scrub it for any information. Our users can also vote on them if they have an issue that's already been reported. And then this is our list for how to report an issue. So it's the data that they're collecting, which is problem type, details, first name, last name, phone, email, a photo, and location. And that location is a geolocation. So it's using ArcGIS, or not ArcGIS, but Esri's geocoder. So it's basically down to like the closest address. Like I said, this list includes all of the requests that are here. You can also look at the legend to kind of get an idea of which one is which if you're looking for a specific one. But overall, this is where all of the data is. And like I said, that list on the right is able to be clicked. Additionally, the highway map looks a little bit different because it's based on of our maintenance areas of the highway area. And so again, the list looks the same. You can still vote on it and report requests the same way. So in the parks, once we go back here, we will actually go into one a little bit deeper. So we'll look at the one that's already been submitted. And so we looked at this one for Dretska. And so we'll go back to the CityWorks dash interface. So this is our CityWorks setup. This is our basic CityWorks setup for our test application. And we'll go into a Dretska Park actually request that was submitted. So here's what our CityWorks interface looks like for the requests that come in from CityWorks, or I'm sorry, from the issue reporter. Sorry, I had CityWorks on my mind. You'll see that it looks very similar to everyone else's interface, which is why we needed it kind of seamless integration because we needed it to come over as clean as possible. We have our attachments here at the bottom. Any caller information can be both on the screen, and then we have our actual caller section, which is here. And so this is the very important key port coming from this issue reporter because we wanted a way to track, the customers, the citizens' email and their name, phone number, so we could get back to them if we needed to. Additionally, this is essentially what it looks like. It collects the details, the addresses, the location, and so forth. And so this is how our interface looks. All right. So like I said before, it needed to be seamless. So we needed to be able to work it into our current CityWorks workflows. Parks is already using service requests for many of the things that they do. So it was very easy for them to kind of integrate it into their workflows already. The biggest major change being that they had to change some of the statuses. And so when some request is submitted, it comes into CityWorks as submitted. So they do need to change their status from submitted to open once they view it, because that information is communicated back to the issue reporter. Additionally, we had customized XML for the users. So we ended up changing some of the, cancellation reasons and data that could generally be entered as like a free-formed response, and we turned it into kind of a drop-down so that we could have cohesive language for the information that's going back to the citizens and back to the public on the Milwaukee County site. We also built a help display, which is embedded into one of our inboxes within CityWorks, and that also includes some of the information that they may need to, if they need help with it, or if they get stuck on something, or if they have a hang up. It's kind of like a FAQ, quick way to kind of use it. We do have CityWorks configured for their receptionists, being that they do have requests coming in from the public as well. And so to do that, a lot of them didn't have access to CityWorks before. And so they had to kind of have a way to kind of go back and quickly say, hey, this person's calling. How can I, assist them with what they need, or how can I fix their issue that they may have? Additionally, we had to introduce service requests to Highway in general. They did not use service requests before because they initially did not have a need for it, because they were using the binder. And so we had to essentially digitize the way that they were processing their requests. So their workflow did change. However, it was in a way that would be more beneficial to them. So it brought the information more into CityWorks and less out of the binder, so it's easier for them to access. So I'm going to hand it off to Tim, and he's going to go in a little bit deeper of the back-end works. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm going to go through a few different configurations that we have here. So we have two different ways that we're passing data back and forth between the issue reporter and our CityWorks application. So the first one is Python. So because our CityWorks website is internal facing, it's not available to the public. We needed to pull the request down from the issue reporter from our internal server rather than push them from the issue reporter to our internal server, because it would be blocked by our firewall. So what we have is we have a Python script that we got from CityWorks and Esri. I believe they worked on it in collaboration. We did make a few tweaks to it that we needed here at Milwaukee County that were kind of specific to us. But we have the script running every 10 minutes as a scheduled task on our server. So basically what it does is it looks up at the issue reporter layer, and it checks a field in that layer called processed. And if processed is yes, then it ignores that value because that means it already processed it. If it's no, then it knows it needs to grab that record and pull it into CityWorks as a service request using the CityWorks API. It then updates that field to the process field to yes. That way, next time it doesn't try to process that same record. Same type of thing with comments. So, if you're familiar with the CityWorks database, there's a separate area for comments. So it handles the comments the same way in a related table in the issue reporter. So next, and I think this might be kind of new to a lot of people, but we use Power Automate to pass the data from CityWorks back up to the issue reporter, as well as notify the public when we were making updates to the request. So along with Power Automate, we use CityWorks Action Manager and webhooks. So on the left screenshot here, you can see this is just an example of one of our webhooks that we have running. So that's issue reporter request canceled for parks. So when Action Manager recognizes that a request was canceled, it triggers this webhook. It then sends the template data on the bottom of the screenshot there, so you can just see a few of the fields. But we're passing about 7 or 8 fields from CityWorks. So request ID, that way we can relate it to the request ID that's in the issue reporter, as well as the object ID, the email of the constituent that reported the request. And we pass that data to Power Automate. So I'm going to kind of show a little breakdown on what's going on in Power Automate here with a few more screenshots. So on the left, that is what is received by Power Automate. So it sends that data over as JSON, and then Power Automate, which is a Microsoft product, by the way, I don't think I mentioned that. It recognizes that JSON, so you can see it breaks it down by fields right away. So request ID equals 34717, object ID is 97, and so on. And then you can also see the cancellation reason on the bottom. And Srey had mentioned, we have a drop down, so that way our staff isn't keying in, anything that they shouldn't be. That should be going back to the public. The next step of the Power Automate workflow or flow, I believe that that's what they're termed by Microsoft, is to send an email. So we're using a SMTP server to send the emails from a no reply email. We want the constituents to comment back into the issue reporter rather than send an email back to us. This mailbox obviously is not monitored, and this one specifically actually doesn't accept incoming emails, so it just would block it. So then we'll send something to the public saying, request has been canceled by a Milwaukee County employee, and then give the reasoning as to why. The next thing in the flow, and if I just click back here, you can see the steps. So there's the send email on the right screenshot, and then it does some stuff with the GIS, so with the issue reporter layer. So generate token, that's going to give you the access. I'm not showing that, obviously, you don't need the credentials. And then it updates the GIS feature. So in the right, it's sending the GIS API a token, and then it's sending it with the attributes that we want to update. So we want to update the status of cancel for object ID 97, cancellation reason, unrealistic project scope. So it's right away, instantaneously, it's sending an email to the constituent, and it's updating in the issue reporter, so that if anyone else is looking or monitoring that request, they're going to see that update even though they weren't the one that requested it. I wanted to kind of talk through this diagram that we have too. So this kind of shows the flow of a request coming from the issue reporter and how we handle it. So starting on the top left, the issue is created by a constituent. It's then created in CityWorks. And remember, it's created in CityWorks by that scheduled job, that Python script that's running. So it creates the request via the CityWorks API, and then it also emails. We have a webhook in CityWorks that is set for when a new request is created to send it to Power Automate, and then that sends an email off to the constituent saying, thank you for submitting your request. We've assigned it, request ID so-and-so. That way, if they ever reach out to us in another way than the issue reporter, they could reference that ID and we could look it up for them. Next step after it's created is our internal staff determines if the request is legitimate. Something important about this step that we hadn't really considered up front is that if we don't have this step, when the public submits the request, they can key in any description they want. And so we actually hide the description of the request from other constituents and themselves after they hit submit until we review it. So when our staff, it comes in as submitted as the status of the service request, we review it, and then if it's legitimate, if there's no swear words or any bad language or bashing our county or anything like that, we'll then click or change it to open. Otherwise, we'll clear out the description and cancel it out, and we're not going to complete that work. So if it's legitimate, then we're going to set the request as open, and then do the normal CityWorks workflow that most people on this call are probably familiar with. We're going to create a work order, complete the work, close it out, and it's going to close out that service request. All of these, you can see the different scenarios. There's 3 different scenarios there where we're going to email the public from those Power Automate flows from those webhooks. So we're going to email that it was submitted, we're going to email that it was canceled, and we're going to email that it was closed, depending on what the case may be. In those cases too, we're also updating the GIS layer along with that, along the whole life cycle of that request. So just a little bit about some acceptance and reporting. We actually embedded some Power BI reports in CityWorks inboxes. We have another presentation on that and kind of how we have that set up. at another time in the conference if you want to check that out and hear more details of it. But basically what this does is it gives a really quick glance as to how many issues there are, how many are open, how many are canceled, how many are completed. And it's especially important for management to know, how this implementation is going. So something that, we were actually kind of surprised with is in the first about 2 weeks of this issue reporter being live, we had about 100 different requests come in. So, that showed us that it was a needed application and the public needed a better way to be able to interact with us in one system. Our staff, as far as acceptance, they didn't really notice much difference. Soraya mentioned that Highway didn't use service requests, so there was a little learning curve there. It wasn't a big thing. They're already using CityWorks on a daily basis for work orders, and so they had to modify their workflow a little bit. For parks, we already have internal service requests, so they didn't really know the difference. Obviously we're storing the requests in a different area for reporting purposes, as far as, we're tagging it with where it's created and things like that. But it wasn't a big lift to, internally to get this up and running. So that was a nice thing to know. So next steps, we have a whole list of phase 2 projects, I guess you can call them, or tasks that we want to kind of add on to the issue reporter. One of the main things is with the CityWorks, with the new version, there's some more flexibility. In my research, I hope that at 15.6, you can actually access more of the related tables through the API, through the webhooks. So we want the ability to have our users be able to communicate back through CityWorks and then have that send to the constituent. So an example would be as if they have a question maybe about the exact location of an issue. They can use the comment functionality in CityWorks and type in, at citizen, is this on the north side of the park, ? Obviously they should know the general location, but, and then that'll trigger a webhook and it'll send that question to the constituent's email. Another big thing that we want to do, as you can see on the screen, we also have CityWorks implemented, I think Soraya mentioned, with our zoo. We also have it with our county transit system. So we'd like to bring on more departments, and allow the citizens to, while they're walking around the zoo, to pull out their phone and, maybe complain about a trash bin overflowing, or, a mess out, in one of the walkways. And same with the bus system. We want to allow the ability for our constituents, if they're sitting at a bus shelter and the glass is shattered, which surprisingly is not uncommon, that they can report that. And one thing that our Parks Department is starting to do is put QR codes, that link to the issue reporter application out on their trails. So, if someone's biking along a trail, and they see that there's a big tree down over the trail, they can just scan a QR code out in the trail and submit that issue right away. And so we'd like to do that at the zoo and transit. Highway might be a little difficult because no one's going to pull their car over on the side of an interstate and scan a code, but that is one of our additional enhancements that we want to do. With that said, that's all we have today. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Feel free to reach out to Soraya or myself if you have any questions, or if you'd like to see any more details about the script that we're running or Power Automate flows, or any general questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.